Good morning, everyone. Welcome back to Yalla Salesforce. Thank you very much for making the time. We're going to continue our journey with the Yalla Salesforce Trail Mix. Over the last couple of weeks, we were focusing on understanding Salesforce fundamentals, Salesforce foundation, understanding more about the platform, getting into the back end, the front end, customizing apps, customizing pages, and then we jumped to the reports and dashboards, and we learned a lot together in order to get ready for Salesforce Associate as an entry point for the Salesforce ecosystem. Today, we are starting a new journey for the administrator track. And we're going to start this with the build flows with Flow Builder. And this is part of a bigger topic, which is business process automation. All right, so let's just get familiar with what is the flow and what it's using for, different types, different elements within this flow. And then we will get back to start the Flow Builder Basics module. How can we start the journey? If we are looking for a flow, usually we start configuring anything from the setup. So we will go in here and say flow. Within the flows, I will be clicking in here, and let's get familiar with this big screen. So what this screen, it will tell you what is the flow that you either have it from Salesforce by having it's a part of a managed package in here, or you customized a new flow and you created your own new flow, and we'll go through there. You will find different types of flows. You have a screen flow, you have auto launch flow, you have flow orchestration, you have all of these auto launch flow and so on. You will find whether this flow is active or inactive. You will find whether it's a template or not template, which will accelerate your development. It's a template ready for you and so on. And you will be able to tell whether this is a custom flow that you created or it's coming part of a managed. All right, so let's just start step by step, understanding what are the different types of flows. And then we will go and explore more the flow builder. Then we'll finally go back to the module. Any questions? All good so far? Perfect. All right, so let's start from here. New flow. And we will start from scratch in here. Why do we need flows in the first place? The flows mainly to implement a business process. Some of those flows will happen as a result of interaction with your user. You want to have a screen, display certain information, and then do an intake for an input from your user. And based on that, you want to do some business processes, take decisions, submit for approval, send an email, and so on. And this will be the main focus for ScreenFlow. It's a guided multi-step screens that you will interact with your user to capture and display and do certain actions. All right, what is the second type of flow? Record trigger flow. Record trigger flow, we are saying there is no interaction in here. Something happened within a specific record and we need to react. This something can be a record created, can be a record updated, a record deleted, and so on. Accordingly, when those things triggered happen, we're gonna launch this flow, do certain business processes, do the looping, do whatever we need to do, and then we will be like doing something with the database at the very end. So we will take that record and react to it. Next time is a schedule trigger flow. What schedule trigger flow means, it's rather than waiting for a record to have an action in order to react. No, in here, we need to run like a batch job in here, but it's all declarative. And within a specific time, we will need to kick off this automation to do something for us. So this is the schedule trigger flow. Auto launch flow is there is no record to change, there is no schedule we are waiting for, and they're gonna kick off as a result of an Apex or another automation calling it. Like another Apex is calling REST API, we can call it through REST API, we can have it as a part of another flow, or it's a button when I click it, I need this to happen. So this is the auto launch flow. Platform event. If you are familiar with development and what is the difference between synchronous and asynchronous and so on, so we certain scenarios, in all scenarios, when we do something, the reaction happened on the same time, in real time. So I click in here, I need to delete the records. The record is going to be deleted. But what if I need to give some time for this reaction, which called asynchronous processing, or even in the integration patterns, I need to have an asynchronous integration. I want to, when something happened, I want to push it as an event in a pipe or in a queue. And then when I have the time and the resources, and even I might have multiple subscriber for this channel or pipe, so I will be publishing once and I'll be consuming multiple part of integrations. And then this is called a platform event or asynchronous. So in here, where can we define this platform event? You can define it from here, from setup, and you go to the platform event, and the process for it exactly like defining a new custom object. So within integrations, you will find in here platform events, and then you define your platform event. It's gonna end up with something, but instead of __ C, which is the custom object, it will be __ E. You can define all your custom fields, and then you have the option to create a platform event. It can be declarative using a flow. You can create a platform event record. So this is like the object. It's called the platform event, the object itself, but you can insert multiple records within this platform event. So what we are talking about in here, this is platform event triggered flow. What that means, I will be reacting to a new platform event from here. So we will have a flow waiting, looking into this platform event. Whenever we have a record in the platform event, we will need to do certain processing. Again, every one of those, it's all about action and the reaction. The action in here, a user opened the screen, started to be interactive with this screen through guided process, and then we do something, the reaction. Record trigger flow, a record has a change, and now we need to do a reaction. Here, time, the clock is ticking, and we reach to this specific schedule, and we will do the reaction. Here, we have a platform event happen, and we need to react to that event. Auto launch, a user or an automation called it, and then we are launching it. All right, so this is a high level of different types of automations. Any questions? Sounds perfect. All right, so let's jump into one of those flow types and get familiar with the flow builder before we start our module. I'll click create in here. You will find in here, this is the start. This is the beginning of my journey with this specific flow. There is nothing in the start for a screen because this is just the beginning. But if we came in here and we said, I need to have it based on a record trigger flow, it will ask you, which record? Because I will react based on a trigger for a specific record. So you want to say, if a new account created, so account, and a record created or updated or deleted or both, and is it every account or just like the high priority accounts? So you can specify certain criteria for what will be exactly the condition that gonna trigger this specific one. And it's a best practice, by the way, to have an entry criteria. Otherwise, it will be running with every record created or every record updated, deleted, and so on. So you need to specify your entry criteria, and then we will go through what is the before and after and so on. But for now, I just wanted to show you the different experience between different types of flows, because every time is customized or tailored its experience based on what the expectation from it. So in here, you are expecting to provide a specific object. Here you are nothing in here. It's just the start. Also, you will find as well, we have different elements. So how can I move forward from here? So I'll just show you the freeform so you can tell. We can see easily what are the different elements. You will find different elements from type to another. So in here, you will find action, subflow, custom error. We will explain what that means. But in here, if I open the same thing, freeform, you will find here you have an option for a screen. action, subflow. So they are different from here to there. Why I changed the freeform? So just to show you easily what are the different elements. Also, to just show you what I mean by freeform. So freeform will allow you to drag and drop components. So I will say this is screen 1. And then let's create 3 screens just to show you why you would need to avoid having a freeform. Screen 2. And then finally screen 3. Now I have 3 screens. And what I need to do as a freeform, I need to drag and drop in order to connect them together. So I'm telling now the flow that I need to move from this screen to this screen to that screen. So I can move them in here, do this here, and confuse you, and do it like that. Accordingly, if you are accessing this specific flow and you saw that, you will not be able to tell where it started and where it's in. All what you can see scattered elements within the canvas in here and the certain arrows, and you can track it down. But you can switch easily from freeform to auto layout. And this is the best practice, to have it auto layout, because there will be no confusion. Yes, I'll lose the position, but it's beneficial to lose the positions in here because I want to see it as a streamlined process. I am moving from screen 1 to screen 2 to screen 3, so there is no confusion in here of what will be the user experience. I'll get back to the freeform to just to get familiar with the different elements in here, and then for sure we will go back to the auto layout. So within the screen flow, you will find here different elements. There are 3 easy buckets. Interactions, because we are saying that the screen flow, it's all about doing an interaction with your user, display certain things, and then do an intake for certain information, and then do the processing. So the processing will be within here, within the logic, do all the manipulation for the data, and finally hit the database for Salesforce by getting data or pushing data. All right, so screen is very unique for screen flow. What the screen can do for us, this is what we can see here on the left-hand side. I can add a screen to my interactive multi-steps flow, and it will allow you to do the intake by doing this input components, or doing output using a display. So you can have a section, you can display a text, you can have a repeater, and within the repeater, you can have multiple input within it. All right, so if I can drag in here, let's put for the screen. Anything within Salesforce, it has its own label, and it has an API. You cannot save this screen. If I went for saying done, it will say you need to specify an API. All right, so I will say this is my first screen. All right, and now this is my API. In here, I will say this is the it was a day component. So it's a good practice to start having a naming convention for your APIs, because for this specific screen, you might need to reference this specific date field to manipulate. We are saying there is an action, user inputting a value, and then you need to react for it. So just to think about the next step where you will need to react. So in order to react to it, you need to have a name that you can understand and you can easily refer to it. So I will say this is a start date, and I will say we can start putting a naming convention for this input date. So I will put input date. This is assume this is our naming convention, and now I have a field that will allow me as a user to put this. You can configure all the show header. You can say I don't need this header. You can show help text. You can configure the footer. You can say I wanna instead of having this finish button, I want to give it a custom label, and so on. We will be getting very familiar with this one. But what we wanted to highlight for now, I can say that we need to intake, and we can display certain things. So I can say welcome text welcome, and I will say welcome to my first screen. This is hello world for the flow. I can format it, make it like that, and make it looks perfect. All right, so I configured my first screen in here. What else? I can take an action. So let me go in here, make it auto layout, and I will say to show you the different way of doing things. If you made it auto layout, you don't have whatever we used to have the elements in here on the left hand side, but you can click the plus. All right, now we are talking about actions. What are the different type of actions? We have too many categories for those actions. Some of them are email related, some of them are feed related, some of them are approval related, and so on. So for example, I captured this, and this was allowing me to enter a discount. And based on that discount, we will learn more about the logic. But for now, I want to submit it for approval. How can I do that? Just add an action and say approval. Within approval in here, you will find submit for approval, and it will ask you certain properties in here. You need to add it in order to configure your approval process. You can also say at the very end, I need to send an email. So you just write an email, and then you can use those. Those call standard actions. So they are provided by Salesforce in order to react by doing those actions. How about you want to take an action, but this action is not available in here? You can develop your own custom action. You can have an Apex class, and it had invocable method within it, and you can call it from here. It do all the magic you want. We just wanted to show you that there's something called action, either a standard action or a custom action that you can deal with it within the flow. What's next? We can have a subflow. That means a flow calling another flow. So this is the subflow. All right, so we are all now familiar with the different interactions. Now, we got this data, and we need to deal with it. We need to take certain decision. As we mentioned in here, so let me add in here, and let me put a number, and I will say this is the discount, and I'll put in here discount, and this is input and number underscore discount. Perfect. I will put in here done. And then I want to show you that I can add, I'll just go back to the auto layout because it's more efficient. And I want to say that I need to add in here decision. And I'll put decision. I need to say this is require approval. So this is the first path. Approval required. And this is, again, this is the decision itself. So let's have certain naming convention that you will define within your organization. Decision and approval required. And I will say, like, for anything that captured from the first screen that have this specific discount greater than 40%, I need to go through this path. Otherwise, go through this path. All right. So we defined now this approval required. And within here, I will add an action to say approve. Submit for approval. So now we have different paths for this one. Submit, anything require an API. So within here, we capture certain information, and now we are taking an action. So we just wanted to show you that part of the logic, you can do such a decision. After that, assignment will be understanding more about variables. We will understand more about collections, and we can loop over those collections. We can transform this collection and make it from collection to another shape of collection. We can sort it, we can filter it, and so on. So this is the second bucket, which is the logic. So we covered the interaction, we covered the logic, and finally the data. We are starting our journey that we need to get data from the database and show it to the user, put it in a table. The user can do selections, do certain intake, putting all of these discount codes and dates and so on. And at the very end, we need to create a record in database in Salesforce, or we need to update a record in Salesforce, or we need to do the deletion and so on. So 3 different buckets: interactions, logic, and finally data. Any questions? Perfect. You will feel the same experience in here, in the record trigger flow. The difference in here, there is no screen in the record trigger flow. There is a record that you need to specify as an entry criteria in here for an object, and the conditions for which record you will need to react. And you will find in here custom error, where it's a corresponding for the validation rule. That's why Salesforce, and when we go through the module now, we will understand that Salesforce is giving us multi options for automation. And you need to be wise in choosing the right tool to do this reaction. So we might say we need to do a validation at the database level. Or no, I cannot do this validation. I don't want to, I cannot just take the decision for stopping this record from creation based on that record. I need to go to another object and loop over it and do the math. And then if this is happening, I need to throw an error. This cannot happen using a validation rule, which we learned before. But if you want to do such a big logic and then decide that I want to force to have an error in here, now the flow will be the answer for you. All right? So far, so good. We just wanted to get familiar with the different types, with the flow builder, the UI for it, getting familiar with what freeform is and what is the auto layout. From now on, everything gonna be auto layout. All right. Now, you will find in here, when we open this one, you will find the manager. What manager means? This is which allow you every element we put it in here, you will find it available in here. So within submit for approval, this is what you will be able to see, that I have something called submit for approval. If you are looking for this specific screen, you will find that this is the screen and what is the API for it. Also, with everything that you put it as an element, you will be able to see it in here, the screens, the decisions, and so on. But on the top of that, you can define variables. What variables means? I want to store something in a bucket and in a placeholder to use it later on. I need to create a formula. I want to put a text template which can be reused across different emails and so on. So we will be understanding more about those resource types. But if you define the variable, you will be able to define it from here, and you will be able to refer it across your process. Every flow, you can save it and you can have multiple versions for it, but there will be only one and only one version active. And you can debug as we did. So let me clean up because I didn't configure any of that. And I will be deleting whatever I did just to show you what debug means. I will be deleting all of these screens. We configured this one. We will save it. It will ask you what will be the name, hello world. And this is my very first flow. I will save it. Now I can run or debug. So let's debug. Debug means I developed it. I want to test it and unit test it before say it's ready. I will be putting run. You will find something called the flow interview start. This is like, it's the instance of this flow. So this is an execution for this flow. You will find that here, the display text we put this as a data type date. Accordingly, it understands it's a date. I will put here a discount. I will put like 40%. And now I will hit finish. You will see that this flow successfully executed. If you want to see what happened within this flow interview, you will find in here that I captured the date, I captured the discount, and then I hit next, and this was a very successful execution for this one. All right, now I can save it as a new version. And version number 2. Now I have two versions. You can easily navigate from here, from version number 1 to version number 2. Both of them are inactive, but I can activate this one. So you can easily navigate between those two versions. As well, if I came back in here within the flows, and I went to the hello world flow that I just created, you can see in here that this is the unmanaged flow I just created, and it's an active, and it's last modified by me. And if I want to see more details about the different versions and so on, you can come from here. You can say view details and versions. When you click it, it will open for you this screen telling you what are the different versions and when it's got created and so on. So this is a very high level for the flow builder, different types, different elements, variables, and so on. Any questions? So far, so good. So we just wanted to let you know what is the flow. But now let's go back to our module, dig into it, and understand first what is the process automation. And when we do this business process automation understanding and what is the business use case behind it, one of the types will be that flow. But we just wanted to give you this sneak peek first. All right, let's go to the module. So back to our trail, we're gonna start exploring more and more about flows and the business process automation. We are starting in here with flow builder basics. So let's jump into the business process automation. We start in here that when we have a business problem to solve, we start drafting a business process, putting the flow chart, putting all the actions that are going to happen in order to start reacting. Those problem statements can be a repetitive tasks that we need to automate, or a script that we need to follow. So the business process are often unique for each organization. So it's hard to find a solution that exactly meets your requirements. Maybe you have, when the deal closed, we need to create a work order. Maybe your call center agents has a specific script to follow based on customer account data, or maybe a task that your user do over and over again. All right. So if the user can only do one thing, why not to do it for them? If the salesperson create a work order after a deal close, can you create it automatically? This is the type of questions we will be start answering throughout our journey with Salesforce automation, and we can solve it using the flow. So as an admin, the use case that you can automate generally fall into two categories: interactive experience, and this can be solved like with a screen flow, where you will have this guided path and you have interaction with your user, or behind the scene. And this can be a record trigger flow, auto launch flow, schedule flow, and so on. All right. So for the interactive experience, we start in here. Screen flow will be the way to go. So flow builder to create an interaction that present information and ask your questions. And we just saw it in the screen flow. Auto launch flow, use flow builder to create automation that run when a button is clicked. Approval process. This will allow us to build a series of steps that with assigned approvers, they can take multiple actions. So when we submit a record for approval, either through an approval process, or we will have this orchestration, or we will have it as an action within the flow. This will be different steps that will be taken. And one of those actions can be a looking record. What we mean by looking record, that means no one can edit this record after submission except the approver. We have the option to do that, or a sysadmin, that they will be able to change. But for anyone that wanted to do a change to this record that under the approval process, it will be logged. So if we went to approval process, we just created a quick, and we will have a dedicated session for the approval process. But for now, when we have an initial submission action, you will find here, it's record lock the record from being edited. And we have an option as well within the flow. We can have an action which we can do a submit for approval. Lightning components. So we can use HTML and JavaScript code to build an interactive component. So we are now moving from a declarative implementation, declarative development, from low code, no code to the pro code. which we will need to have HTML and JavaScript to build the custom Lightning components. It can be an LWC or it can be an Aura component. And then we can leverage those Lightning components within the Lightning page. So if we came back in here and we said, let's open a sales app, and within the account page, we can open any Lightning page in here and say setup, edit page. You will find those are standard components that you can add to the page. However, you have those custom components. You can develop those custom web components, which you can drag and drop as well into the page. Managed, it's just saying this is part of a managed package, but if you develop your custom own LWC, it will be visible in here and you can drag and drop. Finally, visual force page. You will find in here as well the visual force. And when you drag it, you need to specify what is the page name in here. So visual force page is still, it's a pro code, but it's using HTML and the Apex code to build an interactive page. All right, so those are different options between declarative, no-code solutions like the approval process, to no-code, low-code, which are screen flow and the auto-launch flow, to pro-code, which is the Lightning component versus visual force page. How can we decide across all of these options? Salesforce made architect.salesforce.com, and the made this decision guide. So if you went to the architect.salesforce.com, you will find in here decision guides. One of them are building forms. This is even going beyond just a flow versus LWC, because there is another option that is available for part of Salesforce Industries, which is Omni Studio. Omni Studio is in between the flow, which is mainly point and click, and the declarative. Omni Studio is in between, is still point and click, but you need to be familiar with JSON, and it has different technologies within it. So you can develop at the very end, it's gonna end up as an LWC, but all using point and click. So they offer a data mapper, flex cards, OmniScripts, and all of these great stuff. So this is the decision matrix that you will need. If you need a low code form, so dynamic form is part of the Lightning page. Screen flow, which we just say. Omni Studio is in between low code plus pro code, because there are JSON and JSON manipulation, and there are events that you need to understand and so on. But if you need just a pure pro code without even having the option for this low code, now go to the Lightning web components. All right, these are like a good decision matrix, which will help you to decide which an interactive solution you will need. All right, back in here, how about behind the scene? We have record trigger flow. Record trigger flow, when records change, we need to react. When the time click, we need to trigger this flow. Platform event, when event is coming into this platform event, we need to fire this flow. Data cloud trigger, we touched on that. So if we have a data cloud and we consolidated and we have data stream coming and so on, and you need, when a change happens in data cloud, to do a reaction in the Salesforce platform, we can have a listener as well, flow builder, to create automation that run when a change happen in the data cloud. Finally, Apex. Apex is the back end technology that we use in order to do any back end processing. So we can do data manipulation, we can hit the database, we can read from the database, we can have a batch Apex, we can have, even we mentioned that the action can be custom, and we can make an invocable method that we need to have certain action custom. So anything custom that touch back end is Apex. Any questions? So far, so good? Perfect. All right. So if we need to do certain decisions as well regarding the back-end processing and whether to go with the flow or do with the Apex and so on, so you will go in here for the record trigger automation. You will find the same thing. You are moving from the low code option to the pro code option, with before flow trigger, after flow trigger, or after flow trigger, but having an Apex in it, and then finally apex all the way. All right, so let's try to do this together. Automation that runs when requests in Einstein AI conversation or when button is clicked. We said when AI conversation or a button is clicked, that means that this is auto launch flow. Automation that run when a record is created. So anything related to record and we need to react, that means it's a record trigger flow. A series of steps with assigned approver. So if we have an approver, that means we are talking about approval process. HTML and Apex, that means it's a visual force page because HTML and the JavaScript is the Lightning component. Automation that run at the time and the frequency you specify. Anything time related, this has to be schedule trigger flow. An interaction that present information and ask users, that means it's a screen flow. Code used to write reusable blocks of automation. Code and reusability, it's always an apex. Automation that runs when a platform event message is received, it's a platform event. So let's verify our understanding. Yes, we made it. Any questions? Sounds perfect. All right, so true or false? One benefit of automation is that to improve data quality and consistency, definitely yes. Which type of automation runs at a specific date and time? There's gonna be a schedule trigger flow. Woohoo! We made this unit. All right, so let's just go through the second unit, which will get us more familiar for the different types and so on, and wrap it for today. Go with the flow. Some important vocabulary. Salesforce Flow. This is the blanket term for everything in Salesforce that allow you to create, manage, and run automation with clicks, not code. It also includes separate products like Flow Orchestration and Flow Integration powered by MuleSoft. So this is a Salesforce Flow for the automations related to the flow. Flow and automation configuration. Saved in Salesforce with the structure of flowchart, and this is the flow we meet. The flow automates business processes by collecting data using that data to make things happen. It can affect things in your Salesforce org and in your external systems. So within this flow, if we came back in here, this flow can hit APIs, can bring the data from outside. We can publish a platform event for another integrations that listens, and so on. Flow builder. The primary tool for creating flows. So this is the flow builder. So let's go back in here. This is the flow builder where we can build flows. Flownatic, someone who enjoy creating flows like me. We have always those great conversation whether go for the flow or go for a custom LWC versus and based on the limitation and so on. The recommendation always, if you can do it using a declarative development, do it. If you have a complex business scenario that you need to achieve and you need to get triggers and do the looping and you need to manipulation and then you need to do such and such and so on, and you found it started to be very complex, or you need to build the user experience with fully reactive, we need button in here and button in here, and this button can open another screen and this another screen can hit an API, and the complexity started to go in a different direction. This would be the time for customization. However, over the releases, we can see a big change in the flow experience, and now it's allowing a lot of great things that it wasn't possible before. Now the screen flows are reactive. We can hit API using external services and all of these great things, which we will be learning together. So before you decide to go custom, make sure that you exhausted everything possible from the flow. And even this will bring us, if the flow is the starting point, even the answer is no. There are a lot of great technologies within Salesforce that will allow you. So if you just came here into the Salesforce setup and you just wrote a rule and you want to have like case auto response or case assignment or case or entitlement process, and you have a skill-based routing and you need to do this skills and so on. You have an escalation rule. All of that is still possible. So you don't even need to go to the flow if one of those rules can help you in the first place. If you need to create a simple record and you need to have just, you can create it just as an action. So from the accounts, you can go into here, buttons, links, and actions, and go for new action and say, I need to create a record. And the target record will be account. And then you need to say, this is my action. And then hit save. It will open for you the UI that you can add this action into the page and allow to create a new record. So you move from fully declarative using point and click, which is action, which is a validation rule, which is an assignment rule, escalation rule, approval process, and all of these things. Exhausted. If you cannot satisfy your business needs, move to the next level, which is the flow. If you cannot do it using the flow, you can explore the Omni if you are familiar with Omni Studio, and finally move to the Apex and LWC, which is the Pro Code. All right. Now get back to that. Flow looks like a flow chart. They are made up of boxes. We talked about the different elements we can add. So if we're just looking into this flow, you will find that we are starting with a screen, and then we have a contact information. We get record. That means we are querying database for Salesforce to find a match. And if the decision is yes, it exists, updated. If it's not exists, do a create and create. It's a very simple for anybody to understand it. All right. Perfect. But there are best practices. So it's easy, but it's not that easy as well, because whatever is applied to the development is still applied in here. All the best practices are still in here. So I strongly recommend to write flow best practice, and there is an amazing ultimate guide from Salesforce that they offered, because we don't want to end up having a flow like that. So make sure as well to simplify and to make it modular. Utilize the concept that we just talked about very briefly, that we have something called subflow. So within the flow, you have in here saying you can have subflow. So the flow calling another subflow and so on. So do not, hopefully, you will not reach to this like flow complexity. So go through those best practices, and we will cover as much as possible while we are discussing flows journey together. All right, so flows are so powerful, in fact, that you can think of them like visual coding. They are created with clicks, not code. But do you need to understand some programming concepts and logics? Don't worry, you don't need to write code, but you need to know those best practices. What I mean by that, so one of the big guiding principles, if you are writing Apex, you cannot put a DML operation. That means you cannot hit the database. You cannot create record or update record within a for loop. So because this is a big no, you will be every record, you will be going to the database, touch it, and come back, and then come to the next. So you will be hitting the governance limit. If you remember from Salesforce platform session, when we are saying we are multi-tenant, and in order to make this multi-tenant secured for you and for other customers, we need to put a governance limits as a Salesforce platform. So Salesforce platform put those governance limits to protect you and protect other customers. So if you put this DML within a for loop in Apex, you gonna hit governance limits. Same thing. Is it applied in here? Can I put within a for loop in here? We mentioned that we have part of the logic in here, something called loop. And within the loop, we can put a create record. Can we do that? The answer is exactly no, like Apex. So you cannot put a DML operation within a for loop. So you need to know, you don't need to write it as a code, but you need to know what are the best practices from code perspective and do the same thing. We have the concept of synchronous and asynchronous, exactly like the code. If you need to have this transaction to happen at the moment when I do this specific action, you can do it using synchronous. That means it's happening now. Or you can say, nope, this is asynchronous. So that means whenever we have resources and you will have bigger, higher governance limits, so you can do it. This is possible on the code, and this is possible in here as well. So you will find a lot of matching. It's just that here you are using your maps and you are using your UI. The other one is you are writing code. So don't worry, you will not actually have to learn any code, but by learning few development concepts, You can use flows to do all of the same automation as code. It doesn't even have to be very complex. A lot of simple use cases can be solved using flows within a couple elements. But don't do this video. Hopefully, you will not reach to the point that you have a flow like that, because this will be very hard to maintain. All right, flow are not only automation tools you have at your disposal. There are also formulas, validation rules, quick action, Apex, and a few tools of very specific situations. Escalation rules, auto response rules, all of these things we just covered, and they just scanned it very quickly in here within the setup, just to go to the setup in here, and within here, just write rule. Those are specific to certain objects, including the escalation and so on. You will find as well, while we are talking about in here, since we are in here, there was something called process builder. So you might hear this term before. Process builder is the older version of the flow. So we used to build the process builders in order to have like the record trigger flow in here within the process builder. But now Salesforce is saying, whenever you open the process builder, go with the flow. And if for any reason you have an all the process builders, you have a migration tool as well that will allow you to move from process builder into the flow. So exhaust all of these options, explore, be curious, understand more about those capabilities. Accordingly, this will help you to make the right decision for choosing the right tool. All right. However, can automate an incredibly broad range of process in Salesforce. Here are a few examples. Guide a site member through requesting a new credit card with a step-by-step walkthrough. This can happen using a screen flow. Support ticket, click escalate button on a case, reassign the case to a higher level ticket. All of these are different situations. When I do something, I am expecting to have something else. Automating processes with custom code often require the skills of Apex developers. It's complicated and it's expensive, because you will need what we will be discussing that later on when we develop Apex class. You cannot go live with it unless you did something called test class. So you will need to have those test classes in order to do a code coverage and make sure that everything is solid, because all of this is part of the governance limits. So the governance limits in order to protect your org and all other things. So do we have test classes in flows? The answer is you can create tests. So if I opened in here a new flow and I said again, let me have it as a record trigger flow, you will find the option for tests. So you can create tests, and we're going to learn that in the flow implementation 1 and 2 modules. But for now, the test classes is a must for any custom code. If you hang around Salesforce long enough, you will hear someone say something about declarative tools. Declarative tools means you can use the mouse and you don't need any software programming skills. Flow Builder is a declarative tool. Know when to flow. You create flows using clicks, not code. It's a declarative tool. As an admin, you already use declarative tools all the time. You use declarative tool when you create custom fields. So when we come in here and they say, all right, go to the object manager and go for the account and create a custom field, or create a formula field, or create a validation rule, or create a duplicate rule. All of these are declarative tools within the platform. And even changing the UI by having this dynamic forms and build the lightning page, this is a declarative tool as well. So if you understand how Salesforce objects and fields work and interact with each other, you're already halfway down the path. The best to consider declarative tool options before exploring custom code. We are keep repeating this one. Automation created with declarative tool is usually easier to create and maintain and support in the future. From people perspective, learning curve and learning code takes more time, can often more difficult. And again, back to the conversation of no code, low code, pro code, it will go in that exact path. So the more you move into the pro code, so Omni Studio is harder to implement than Flows. Custom LWCs and custom Apex is harder than Omni Studio. So it's a more pro code, more skill sets you will be you will need in order to achieve it. We're not saying you should avoid code. Someone use case can be solved with flows, but your requirements and the limitations will be better solved with the code. And there will be all things code do not can do that flow cannot do. Ultimately, most common automation scenarios can be built in flows just fine. So it's all about understanding the limitations. So we were just saying, if I want to save this record, through an error. If you are just talking about this, the data provided within this record, you can implement a validation rule. But if you need to go and query and do all of these great things, that means you can do it in the flow. And we just saw that we have something in here called customer. So you can implement the customer error, which is the validation rule, in here while we are trying to create a record. And for any reason the flow didn't help you to do that, the next step is to do it in Apex. So it's over the time, over experience, building experience, you will be able to tell which tool can do what the best. Just keep your solution simple and try to make it declarative as much as possible. For example, if your business process require a user to generate PDF, this is not a functionality that the flow can do it naturally. You need to customize. You probably need someone to put a solution doing an Apex class, and then you can call it in order to generate this PDF. All right, so let's look let's go for this one. Honestly, sometimes you need to take this decision, flow versus code. And if you are thinking that to start with the flow until you exhaust everything available in the flow and then move to the next, feel free and be proud of yourself that you are not alone in that journey. So try, experiment in a flow first, and then shift to the code if it doesn't work. Let's be very clear here. This is perfectly fine. So that means even Trailhead here is telling you, you are not the only one trying to do the same. It's normal part of the learning automation. Even within Salesforce, developers dedicate time to research and experiment before they start working on a new feature. This ensures that they have determined the best approach before committing to a certain path. There is no simply definitive way to decide whether a use case solution should be built in flows or code. Experiment and don't be afraid to get wrong the first and second and even third time. Thank you very much, Trailhead. This is absolutely perfect, and it's a real scenario. We are facing it every day. Let's look an example to give you an idea how can you use flows. All right, Flow Smith is a business analyst and Salesforce admin. She's been asking her stakeholders to invest in automation more of their business processes. She's eager to take advantage of the efficiency improvement that the Salesforce automation tool can do. The use case capture values for only the required field, first name and last name, and the associated account. If they are matching a contact, update it. If there is no matching contact, create one. All right, create record can start from a quick action. Can the quick action do this? Find the matching, and if not matching and so on, the answer is absolutely not. You cannot do that. You cannot do those conditions. Accordingly, this will take us to the next one, which is the flow. To round out this business process, we want to provide confirmation that business process is complete. If we note what the flow did in chatter, more user can access that information. All right, so as a result of doing that, we need to take an action and post a chatter or send an email, but we have closed the channel like the email that only the receivers will have this information, or we have this open conversation that can happen through the chatter. So let's add two more requirements. Confirm what happened by posting on a chatter, confirming the user the business process is complete. All right, the solution. Here are the different options we are discussing. Quick action. Form, yes, we can have a form. Can we do a logic and actions and so on? The answer is no. Do we need to have code? No. Flow can do that? Yes, because it's form, and we can have actions, and we can have conditional logic. Does it require code? No, it's a declarative tool. Lightning components, yes, yes, yes. Because the use case require conditional logic and action, quick actions will not work. That leave flow and lightning component. However, lightning component can only be written by code. So we need a professional, we need a pro code in here in order to make it happen. Flow doesn't have a lot of coding experience. She wants a solution that can support in the future without needing to call for code help. Remember, it's generally best to consider declarative tool option before exploring custom code. I hope this was helpful. This is just that we are scratching the surface with the flow, with the different automations within Salesforce. Any questions? Sounds perfect. All right, so let's go for this quiz and wrap it for today. How does Flow Builder relate to Salesforce Flow? Flow Builder is part of Salesforce Flow. This is the UI we build all of these flow. Salesforce Flow is part of Flow Builder? No. Salesforce Flow is the fastest version of Flow Builder? No. Flow Builder is an alternative to Salesforce Flow? No. When should you build a flow? Every time you need automation? The answer is no. We just mentioned that we have all of these great rules. We have the declarative, we have the formula fields, and so on. So not every time. When you want to automate without writing code, that's right. If you reach to a point that all of these declarative tools are not working, and you need to do an automation, and you don't want to write code, flow will be the best option. When you need to replace an assignment rule, when you want to code, the answer is woohoo. We made it. We can thank you enough. If there is no question, thank you very much and have a wonderful day and talk to you next week. Bye-bye.